Recently I've joined the gym. I'm not sure if you can tell or not, but some of the young guys in the parish, they sort of talked me into it, and they took it as their mission to get Father Josh jacked. I'm not sure it's working. We're only a few weeks in, right? So they're really positive. I think we've got some good progress so far. And it's been great. We're having a lot of fun. It's been really wonderful. And you know, you go to the gym, you've got push day, and you've got pull day, and you've got leg day, and there's different ways different people do it. I'm not so good at the upper body stuff, but leg day, I'm doing okay on leg day, and it was leg day just on Friday, and hadn't been for a bit of the week, and so it was good to be back in the gym, and it came to doing squats. Now, apparently, the secret, I got no idea, but the secret to making a squat really good is making sure that you get enough depth. If you don't go deep enough, then you don't activate the muscles that you're sort of trying to work on and isolate. I don't know what any of those words mean, but this is what the guys have told me, right? So I'm not going to give you a demonstration of the best squat. That'll be embarrassing for everyone. But what they were saying is normally when people do squats, they go to a certain depth that's kind of the limit of what's comfortable, and then they go back up again. And they miss out, when they do that, they miss out on sort of what's the best benefit of the exercise. And one of the guys said, you've got to push through that limit of being comfortable and go that little bit deeper, and that's when you're kind of going to get the thing. You drive out of your heels and you go up and all that sort of stuff. To put it in his word, it's only when you pass through those limits that you get the gains, apparently. So sure enough, I went to that depth, and my goodness, it was a whole nother ball game at the gym on Friday, and my legs are still pretty sore today, and I can tell you that's no word of a lie. Now, the reason I mention this isn't so you guys can also pray that I get jacked, but it's because I think this idea that we need to go beyond the limits of what's comfortable isn't only about squats in the gym. That so often in life, I think we can go to the point of the limit of what's comfortable for us and say, okay, you know what? I've gone pretty far, but I think that's enough. So often when it comes to loving others, we go to that point and go, you know what? Well done, we're doing well, it's okay. I'm going to take the foot off the accelerator here and just kind of be like, yeah, a little bit of progress is sort of going okay. The problem is, however, is that if we stay at this limit of sort of being comfortable, if we don't take up the opportunity and that invitation to go a little bit deeper beyond what's comfortable, we remain limited in our love. We remain limited. And I think the reason we don't go to that deeper level is because what's often there is a whole lot of stuff we'd rather not explore. Stuff we'd rather leave left undisturbed and untroubled, out of sight and out of mind. It might be that relationship from the past that's broken down, that's marked by hurt and unforgiveness and seems impossible to reconcile. It might be someone that you find particularly difficult to love, whether that's at work or school or at uni, in a friendship group, or even in your own family. It might be an experience from the past, a memory, a moment that was hurtful or difficult or even a little bit traumatic, better left consigned to the part of the mind that we dare not go into. It might even be internally an area of sin in our lives, hidden and unseen, that leaves us so consumed with guilt and shame that we'd rather not show anyone, let alone show it to God. It might even be an area, a part of ourselves, an area of brokenness or woundedness that pops up from time to time and in lots of different ways, and it's an area that maybe we're not proud of, that we're not sure how to address or how to move on from. That no matter what it might be, in those depths we tend not to go to, we can often hold back from pushing beyond the limits of what's comfortable, from pushing beyond the limits of what even feels possible for us. And in doing so, these challenges, these difficult areas and these relationships, they remain off limits, untouched, fruitless, and often unhealed. And what's more, if we leave them there, it's not like we can go, okay, well, they're there and I don't have to think about it and it doesn't have an impact on my life. But if we don't go into these areas, if we don't address them, if we leave them kind of unresolved, they tend to impact on our lives in a myriad of negative ways and inhibit us from moving in the freedom that Jesus desires for each and every one of us. And this, I think, is at the heart of what Jesus is talking about in the gospel today. That in all of the challenges, Jesus covers a fair bit of ground this morning, in all of the challenges Jesus has placed before the disciples here today, to love our enemies, of course, that's the big one, but also to live without judging and condemning others, forgiving others, giving to others, whatever it might be, Jesus invites us not to simply stop at the limit of what's comfortable, to not simply love those who are easy to love those who don't have a cost associated with them, to not simply give to those who give back to us. But in recognising this challenge, I think it's important too to take a moment here to recognise what I think is the central invitation of Jesus in this entire passage. And this is important because it could be easy to see this instruction from Jesus as just another task we have to do. A task that rests solely on our shoulders, that we've got to somehow, some way, find a way to forgive the unforgivable, to love the unlovable, to give to the ungivable, and to do this all kind of in our own strength. But Jesus isn't giving us a job to do and leaving us to our own devices, because there's something deeper going on here. Because after Jesus instructs his disciples to love our enemies, he says this beautifully intriguing line. He says, "Be compassionate as your Father is compassionate," or as some translation put it, "Be merciful as your Father is merciful." What Jesus is saying here is that for any of this to be possible, any of the rest of what he's spoken about in the gospel today to be possible, for us to be able to go to the new depths that he's inviting us into, we need to know the mercy and the compassion of God the Father for us. As Pope Francis says so beautifully, that in the gospel the essential thing is mercy. That the entirety of human history, the story of salvation, the good news of the gospel, is a story of mercy for you and for me. It's a story of a Father whose heart is so merciful that he sent his only Son into the world. A God who made himself man to walk with us and to love us, to save us and to grant us his mercy. It's the story of Jesus, fully God and fully man, who walks with his disciples and met so many with his merciful, loving gaze of love and forgiveness that changed them and their lives forever. It's the story of Jesus who, even though he was without sin, in his merciful love for us, took upon himself all of our sin, our shame, our brokenness, our woundedness, all the evil in the world, and took it to the cross and to death. The story of Jesus who on the third day rose again from the dead to win us new life, a life that is meant to be marked with joy, grace and mercy. The story of a God who, while we were still enemies of him, he loved us completely to the end. The story of a God who, even though we have nothing ourselves to give him, gave himself completely to us. The story of a God who, in the face of ridicule, abuse and assault, was a spotless lamb, offered in sacrifice out of love for us. Of a God who is kind to us even when we're most ungrateful and wicked. The story of a God who doesn't judge us or condemn us, but loves us, who grants us pardon and desires to pour his love into our hearts, a full measure running over. Furthermore, though, it's also a story of a God who wants to encounter each and every one of us in his mercy, in his compassion in a new way today. Because when we experience God's mercy and his compassion and his love for us, when we know ourselves as loved completely in the midst of our brokenness, that we're able to experience a radical freedom to go beyond our human limits to new depths, to love others, particularly those we find most hard to love. That Jesus wants us to bring him those places, those depths, those realities and relationships in our lives, those areas of brokenness where we find it so often to love those around us and even to love ourselves, to bring them and to allow him to meet us there with his loving gaze of mercy and compassion. That Jesus longs to meet us in those places of hurt, of disappointment, of discouragement, of broken relationships, of past hurts, of our own sin and brokenness and those areas of seeming impossibility, and to let him love us in that place. Because we're made for love. We're made by love and we're made to love. And love is written on our hearts. And that when we know ourselves as loved by Jesus and know his merciful and compassionate gaze upon us, it unlocks the new depths of love that our hearts are crying out for. And so the invitation of Jesus today is to go to that place, whatever that might be for you, to go to that depth beyond the limit of what's comfortable, to say to Jesus, won't you come and love me here in this place? To allow him to take us to the new depths of love and mercy that he wants for us, to bring us to that new place of freedom, that relationship, that reality, or that experience today. And that when we do this, we open ourselves to this new depth with him. We find a love in our hearts that we didn't think was possible. And we realize that we receive such an abundant gift of God's love and grace, a full measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, as his love comes to life in us in new ways. Amen.